All right. Hello and welcome to another edition of Critical Conversations, the show where you guys get to talk to us being me, Chris Shelton, your host, and my co-host, Melissa, my beautiful wife. Hey, baby, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. Hey, critics out there. What a week, what a day, what a show, what a time to be alive, huh? So frustrated right now. I am very, very frustrated with, of course, the Danny Masterson trial right now and what is happening with that. I didn't think that was going to work the way I thought it would. Still working on trying to figure out how to get these chats displayed on screen, so still going to be working on that. Unfortunately, there's this weird thing with YouTube where the chat has to be live in order for me to even be able to test this bloody thing, and it's a little frustrating, but we're working on it because I really want that feature for us on this channel without having to redo everything from scratch again using some other way to do my broadcasting. So just a little technical housekeeping.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, technical nonsense. In the meantime, the show goes on like we've been doing, and as I am always so happy to just be able to do this at all. Okay. Yeah, we'll see. We will definitely see Xenu. That will definitely be a point that I will be discussing here today. But before we get into all of that, and before we get to your calls, and we're going to, as we were describing, I think it was last week, and I will say again, because this is, kind of new format for the show, is we're gonna talk, we're gonna monologue. We've got things to say. We're gonna do that without interrupting ourselves or even looking at the call-in queue. And then we will start taking calls if there are calls in the call-in queue. Otherwise, we'll just keep gabbing because we can do that.
Yeah.
But hopefully you guys will call in and talk to us at 984-214-4154. But first, we have a few things to go over. This has been national. The show this week is National Cult Awareness Week. So I have some things to talk about with that. I am really glad that this exists as a national week of awareness. And this is, of course, today, as we will go over, today is the anniversary of the awful discoveries in Jonestown, Guyana, way back in the 1970s, that first alerted the world to why cults are a bad thing in a really big, spectacular, horrible way. Anyway, so we will talk about that too. But before we get into all of that, as we're just having people come on board here as we get started, you, as our resident co-host and beautiful person and amazing, intelligent person, have a quote.
Yes.
Okay.
So some of you might remember that it's been almost a year since Seven, our cat, passed away, and so it'll be a year on Thursday, on Thanksgiving. So it's kind of going to be a tough day, but hopefully not too bad, But I've just been thinking about him, and so I have this grief quote. Grief is a most peculiar thing. We're so helpless in the face of it. It's like a window that will simply open of its own accord. The room grows cold, and we can do nothing but shiver. But it opens a little less each time, and a little less, and one day we wonder what has become of it. And that's from Arthur Golden and the book Memoirs of a Geisha.
Oh, interesting.
Which was way better than the movie.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, that's also reflective of the fact that as time goes on and as we process, I have to do something while I'm still thinking about it.
Okay,
cool. Sorry, just needed to move something. It's processing the stages of grief, right? You come to an acceptance. You come to a place where you can accept it. And it really is, it's miraculous that our brains can do that we can process things. Not that this is related, but kind of in the same way. I was marveling today. Again, different emotional experience, but in the same kind of, isn't it amazing what we get used to? There was a picture of Mars from the surface taken yesterday and posted up on Twitter, and I retweeted it, and I was just like, it's so mind-blowing that a photograph from the surface of another planet, not the moon, another planet in our solar system, is received now with, that's interesting.
Yeah, no big deal.
Wow. Sure is red. Wow. Okay, whatever.
Neat. Look, Sandy.
Like it's just, we can get used to anything. I mean, you guys stop and really admire, smell those roses sometimes, remind yourself of the amazing world that we live in. I really needed to be thinking like this today because this is kind of how I try to cope and deal with the stress and the worry and concern over certain world events, and there's a few things to, be like about, but we're not going to go into all of the things Chris is upset about today. But we are going to talk about cults. So let's do that, okay? Since that's what we tend to get into here on this show is cults and coercive control and the ways that means that not so nice people out there decide to try to use deception and manipulation and influence and a whole spectrum of this and propaganda to, change how we look and feel and think about things. And most importantly, by the way, as I'll harp on this till the day I die, how we feel about things. It's all about the feels when it comes to how to manipulate people. Mm-hmm. You can manipulate them with facts, but it's on a bedrock that those facts are on a bedrock of emotion, and there's a lot of power there. Thank you guys. I'm seeing some wonderful comments from you guys today. Very complimentary and always appreciated. Yeah, Keith, that's right. MLMs, if it need be said, and it does often, And here's the other thing that really disturbs me that I'll comment on a little bit, only because of the Twitter brouhaha this week and the true wondering right now whether Twitter is going to survive Elon Musk and his rulership. He's only been there a month, and he's apparently gotten rid of so many engineers and coders and software people and mostly engineering people. And you don't really think or realize or even give too many thoughts to
how important they are. Yeah.
And what they're doing. Like, you've really gotten, in the last couple of weeks, we've really gotten a bit of an interesting deep dive into how Twitter works a little bit, at least some of the systems and the complexity of them and all that. And of course, I understand it's not just a web page. You know what I mean? I didn't expect that. But there's just these layers upon layers of safeguards, controls, and various things. And if people aren't monitoring those and watching them, the whole thing falls apart. And yet, to this day, to right this second, even with Twitter being on the brink of potential collapse, apparently, you got the fanboys out there. You got the Billionaire Fanboys Club, and there's quite a few of these. And they're these little cults of personality that build up around these individuals. And it's quite scary to me, just to comment on this, since we're talking about national cult awareness. These cults of personality are cults. I mean, let's be clear about this, that this is not a good place for your head to be, no matter who you are, no matter what the personality is. I don't even care. This isn't even a political rant. It's just, don't get so invested in anybody that you can't question them, that you think everything they do just drips honey and gold. There is no person who deserves that much of you. You create your own kind of codependency when you're doing that, because it's not like, billionaires, like, whether we're talking about any of them, Bezos or Musk or Gates or Jobs or, and these are just the ones that are in the public eye. There's lots of others who aren't so public, very influential, still have little cults personality built up around them. I call them their fanboys, right? Because it's an easier, lighter term than cult members, but it's the same thing, and you see the same degree of the lack of critical thinking and the lack of questioning. And and I really used to fall for Musk and some of his PR, and I've since learned how much.
Me too.
How much propaganda there is there. It's been quite enlightening lately on that particular point. So. Just another thing.
I know I was really excited about the idea that he might be able to get us to Mars because no one else is really taking that seriously. So I was like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. And now I'm like, oh, that's just a fantasy of his. He's full of shit.
Yeah, kind of. I tell you, my first break with Musk as a person or as an entrepreneur or just genius billionaire spirit, who's raising the whole society with him, was the Boring Company, this tunneling thing he was planning on doing. I came to learn that that whole effort was not a serious effort on his part to actually improve transportation or tunneling or whatever it was he was saying they were going to do. Instead, it was a monumental investment and effort, because what he wanted to do was kill any other high-speed rail projects going on, specifically in California. He wanted him dead. I don't know why, but he did. And so any planning and investment and government work being done in that direction apparently was killed because of
probably
what he was doing.
He wanted all the liberals to be driving his Teslas. I'm just kidding.
I have no idea, but that's, he killed it. And that's the kind of deceptive thing that somebody who's got billions of dollars to play around with can do. They can go, oh, well, I'm just going to start this whole thing with no intention of actually finishing it, with no intention of actually improving anything, just a big misdirector. It's a great big scam, to kill this other thing. It's just, I don't like that kind of thing.
No.
Not much at all. Now, we'll move on, because I know there's a lot of people who get really riled up when I talk about certain people and certain things, and I know Musk has his fanboys. I just really want you guys to know I'm not one of them. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the Masterson case real fast, because I'll give you some of my thoughts on this. My head is a whirl right now, but really it comes down to some pretty brass tacks. So Danny Masterson's been on trial for the last 4 weeks, for assault, through a sexual assault rape, right, of 3 women. 4 women testified. 3 of them had charges brought by the DA against Masterson, and he is faced with the very interesting situation of having been brought to trial on I don't know if it's there's some California thing that allows you to bring multiple victims into the picture, and then that bypasses or gets rid of statute of limitations considerations for some reason on these charges. And so as a group, the women are bringing, these charges through the DA's office is bringing these charges for these women. And yet, apparently, the deal is that he has to be found guilty. Tony Ortega explained this the other day. He has to be found guilty of more than one of those crimes. Or the potential is that he can't be found guilty unless it is more than one of them. So if the jury comes back with absolutely Jane Doe 1, he definitely raped her, but the other 2, no, we're not convinced, we're acquitting him on those, then he could walk, which is a very perplexing legal problem. The judge said, yeah, we're going to shelve that problem until it happens. Probably smart from her point of view, right? Why put that there or create all that problem when it might not even happen? But that's an interesting point on this, one that I was not fully aware of until Tony sort of detailed it the other day. But more now to the point is today we've been waiting for the last 3 days for the jury. It's been in deliberations for 2.5 days. And in that time, they have apparently deadlocked. That's what they reported back to the judge today is, we can't reach a decision on any of the charges. They are conflicted on all of them. We do not know, though, and I want to stress that we don't know. We have very few facts here, except for the fact that there is an inability to come to an agreement on what's going on these charges. But we do not know the numbers. We have no idea, and so we are struggling. We are left without that information. It is impossible for anything beyond conjecture right now as to what's going on. Unless you're in the jury room, you don't have a clue. And nobody should really be trying to say what's going on. As Tony has so accurately and humorously reported during this week, everybody's got an opinion, and they can be, the same two journalists sitting on either side of him in the trial watching this thing, just like Tony has been. One of them can watch the jury or read the jury, and I've seen videos about the jury, and let's read the jury and talk about the indicators of the jury. Come on, shut up. You don't have a clue. They just, unless, there's obvious signs you can watch for. Of course, if the entire jury was sleeping through half the trial, you might start thinking, okay, well, maybe we don't have such a great case here, but that's not what's been going on. And so nobody knows what's going on in that room right now. And the numbers would really tell us a lot, but we're not going to find that out right now. In other words, we don't know if it's one juror holding out. Is it half the jury versus half the jury? Is it a juror holding out for guilty, or is it a juror holding out for innocent? Like, what are we looking at here? We don't know. My mind being the way that it is, and thinking the awful ways that I think, I immediately think to myself, the possibilities. I start running through the statistical possibilities of, could the Church of Scientology have contacted or influenced one of these jurors in some fashion? And of course, the answer to that question is a very resounding yes. Of course they could have. This is not a sequestered jury. They're not being, kept apart. The judge has instructed them extremely clearly that they are not to look at any media, news reports, internet, nothing about this case. Those instructions have been crystal clear. And of course, every juror is instructed that they are not to be contacted and spoken with about the case by anybody outside, certainly not journalists, certainly not anybody involved in or interested in the case, like a representative of the Church of Scientology or a representative of Danny Masterson or something like that, right? On both ends. Also prosecution too, right? No, but none of them are going to be contacting any of the jury outside of the courtroom. So they all know this. This has been very clearly told to them to not do any of that. But Scientology doesn't care. You know it, I know it, right? I know it to my bones. I know exactly how far they're willing to go, and they're willing to go all the way. And I have personally witnessed Scientologists, volunteer to go do illegal things, to take on the system, to take on the man, to rage against the machine. Because they want it to be a martyr for the cause. It's virtue signaling 101. It's all about status and position in the group. And if you can go be, a martyr for the group, and you're already in the us versus them, black and white, headspace of this is all good, and anything I do for this is automatically therefore defined as good, then you can get martyrs. So would somebody in Scientology, martyr themselves, or potentially, in other words, what I mean by that is, would they potentially endanger themselves by going and doing something illegal? Or alternately, could the Church of Scientology have hired somebody to go do something like that, since most of their dirty work these days is done by hired guns, right? Private investigators who have no moral compass, lawyers who really don't care who's paying them or how they get their paycheck. Of course they could do that. Of course they could. And so that is a possibility. How big of a possibility it is, no one really knows.
See, that I think if it's not Scientology, and this is my angry feminist part of me speaking, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's just one or two people holding out, males.
Yeah, there's that too. I mean,
it sounds messed up, but
it's, I wish the world were a better place that way.
Yeah.
I do. You're not going to hear from me or Melissa, I think, believe all women.
Right. Some women lie. That's obvious.
They do. We're a little bit more nuanced than that on this show, right? I don't do #believe all fill in the blank or whatever, because that's bullshit. There are absolutely women who will lie, who will chase gold, who will do all kinds of nefarious things because they think it's going to advance their career or their celebrity status or whatever. Yeah. Or for hurt. That's right. For revenge purposes. It happens.
And obviously it's a smaller percentage, much smaller percentage than the people that are telling the truth, but still, you have to
allow for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Similarly, there are men who just don't believe any women ever about anything, right? Now, they've tried really hard in the jury selection process to weed out people who have those kind of biases and, get a jury of people who, are honestly invested in discovering and judging on the truth of the matter. But we all know about those biases that we all carry around with us. And so and
let's be honest. I mean, the defense is always going to be looking for jurors that tend to lean their way, and the prosecution is going to look for jurors that seem like they might lead their way. And,
That's right. That's right. So, so we could sit here and discuss these kinds of prejudices and biases and how they might affect the thinking of the jurists. Or it could be something going on in that room that is completely different from all of this, right? Who knows? I mean, I have seen religious studies scholars. I have seen incredibly intelligent people. In other words, where I'm trying to go here, right, is I have seen people who have observational ability, who have the ability to read and understand things that are put in front of them, who have the ability to think rationally and critically and think through things logically, assert to me that the Church of Scientology is absolutely positively just a little baby religion. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I'm the person who is the problem in this picture, not the Church of Scientology. I have seen numerous scholars take that position because they fervently believe that religion must be protected and coddled like a little baby, and you gotta take care of them and nurture them and grow them and water them and feed them, and then everything is great. And yet over any level of abuse or nonsense or even fraud or deception or even criminal acts, we have to let these people believe what they want to believe, damn it. And if the few, it's this sort of broken, I can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs kind of justification.
Cool. Tell that to a bunch of boys in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, a lot of religious scholars will give Catholicism a pass in one form or another, exactly for the same reasoning, right? So I guess where I'm going with that, of course, is that very, very smart people, very, very people that you wouldn't think are biased in some fashion, well-educated, can display such a strong bias because of their beliefs that they are completely blind to the facts that are right in front of their face. And they won't even stop for a second to consider whether they're the ones who might have it wrong. It's dumbfounding to be confronted with somebody who is so arrogant and condescending that they are positive that people like me and Karen and Tony and Leah and Mike and all of us, we're the agitators, we're the bad guys. Tying this back in, of course, to National Cult Awareness Week, these are the people in academia for decades now who have kept the awareness of cults down. They have suppressed it. They have talked about how cults don't exist. Cults are just derogatory terms that you use to denigrate and destroy religious freedom and belief. And how dare you, you agitators.
What do they call Jonestown or Waco or Manson or...
An unfortunate event.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So... anyway, so it does get a little frustrating on that line. And in fact, just to highlight a little bit here today, this is going to get a little gruesome, but we need to talk about this because the whole reason National Cult Awareness Week exists, most of the reason why you guys know anything about cults or watching the show today, have been interested in this, is because of what, this unfortunate event, this tragedy of biblical proportions, happened back in 1978. It was November 18th, 1978. The total death toll was 918 individuals, and all but 2 of them from cyanide poisoning. And it was Flavor Aid, by the way, not Kool-Aid. That famous, they drank the Kool-Aid. Now it was actually Flavor Aid, but nobody's changing.
Kool-Aid sounds cooler than Flavor Aid.
Exactly. Literally, it sounds cooler. So that's how you get that. There's a few myths connected with all of that, but that's kind of one of the biggest ones that have survived. I'll just read from this here. Of course, this revolutionary suicide that occurred, ordered by Jim Jones, who had gone completely nuts by this point. It had been years of mental breakdown on his part as he just could not deal with the power and with his own personal demons. And he took and originally his group started with community cleanups and anti-racism and some actual positive community efforts that it got him a lot of attention. Jim Jones, I'm talking about now. Through the 60s, through into the 70s, there was, there was early work where they appeared to be, kind of okay guys doing okay stuff, trying to help people out. And then things got weirder and weirder over the years, and you can read about all the details. It's quite extensive. This is a very well documented story. But they went down there, and Jim Jones even recorded it. There's audio of the mass murder.
Yes, yeah.
Really, it's, I think, the best way to describe it. And of course, this also included Congressman Leo Ryan and some journalists and his staff who had gone down there to investigate what was going on. And they went down to Guyana. Jim Jones had taken his show down there with more than 1,000 people, and these are families we're talking about now. These are not just wild-eyed, goofy cultists who didn't know any better. This is whole families went down there with him, and so all of them slaughtered. And so there had been reports to Congress. Hey, this is a dangerous group. We don't know what they're doing down there. They're out in the jungles. They got guns. Jim Jones is saying crazy stuff. There had been some people who'd gotten away and had reported on this and were trying to get public sentiment and attention to the situation before all this went down. And this was the catalyst, unfortunately, for Jim Jones' madness, that it wasn't caught earlier. And so when Congressman Ryan went down there to do his inspection, somebody tried to stab him. I mean, they brought him and his group into the camp, into the Jonestown encampment, and somebody tried to stab him.
Wow.
They got the hell out of there. Jones said let them go, but he had set up one of his members to infiltrate with Congressman Ryan and their group, because there were some people who said, we want to leave with you. Well, Jones planted somebody in there, and when they tried to get the hell out and get out to the airport and take off, this guy who had been planted in there started shooting inside the plane. And then a whole bunch of guys showed up from Jonestown with guns and started shooting. And it was only a few of those people in Congressman Ryan's party who managed to get the hell out of the plane and into the jungle, who escaped, notified the Guyana army military, and they went in there and found everybody had died off, had been killed. So, like I said, there's a lot to know about that tragedy. It is incredibly well documented. And Hayhun says here, that Jonestown tape is a chilling listen. It is. I refer to it only to let you know it exists. I don't recommend listening to it particularly unless you have a pretty hearty stomach and spirit, because it's devastating. It's very, very hard to listen to. Jones is just going on. And this was Jim Jones was somebody who was used to standing in front of a mic and talking. They had been blaring his recordings and his lectures and stuff for weeks prior to the whole takedown. There was so much mind control going on there. So many coercive tactics being used, including all the way up to forceful holding people in place, and of course eventually killing them. So that is what it took for the United States and for a bunch of people around the world to wake up. I mean, this was the biggest mass murder event, I think, before 9/11 that happened with certainly with people who come from the United States. Mm-hmm. It was big. It was huge. And it kind of woke everybody up to the fact that, some guy could take a bunch of people out into the jungle and kill them all. And that could happen. That was a real thing. That really happened. And children really died as a result of that. Lots of them. Women, as well as the men. So it was awful in every sense of the word. And that is the event that we are not forgetting, never forget, right? With this week and with this day. And yet, of course, the reason I sit here every week and talk and go on at a mad rate about all this, and having come out of a cult myself, is, have we really learned? Have we figured out never again? No, we haven't.
No.
We haven't. Not even close, right? We're not even remotely there. Opportunists and enablers and predators, they're out there. They're out there in number, and they have a lot of things to sell you. There's a lot of bridges to sell you. There's a lot of opportunities to sell you, and that's what they're trying to do. Basically, they're trying to sell you.
Well, and I think we still have this idea, I think that comes to people's mind when you say cult. A lot of people think of like a Charles Manson sort of thing, or Heaven's Gate, where it's just a few people and they're all dumb and they all just follow this idiot guy. But and they think of it like that. They think of it's just this small thing, and they don't realize that, it can be huge, like Scientology and other cults.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you're right, Debbie. It's not that human nature is going to change. It's not. It's not. What can change, what we can do something about, is our understanding of our nature. And enough people understand it well enough, early enough, and you get change. Mm-hmm. Right? We no longer run around with swords and shields beating each other over the head because some, nobleman tells us to. We don't resolve conflicts that way unless we're, kind of antisocial.
Yeah.
We do not have shootouts in the middle of the street anymore. Well, unless we're, actually I shouldn't go that far.
Maybe
I really shouldn't.
Yeah.
But we do have less of that, I'll say. And it's not as tolerated.
Yeah, you will get in trouble if you get caught. Yeah.
Yeah, as it used to be, right? In other words, you can do that, but there will be consequences. It's not a consequence-free existence anymore. Right. Even that, right? Huge progress, huge strides forward. But how long does it take for us to move our civilizations?
So many years.
So many years, right? So this stuff we're doing is not just for everybody's entertainment. It is for educational purposes. We've got to change the entire national attitude about, these cults of personality, this billionaire, wonderful man. And if I just listen to him and follow him, I can be a billionaire too. It's like, get your head out of your ass. It doesn't work like that. Get a job, have a life, find somebody you love, have some kids, have a life, enjoy your life. That's hard enough just to pull that off. The whole get rich quick, I'm going to make all this money and everything's going to be great for me. Some of the most miserable people I have ever met in my life have been the richest people I've met. And I have met some very rich people. I mean, shit, I knew Bob Duggan. He's the richest guy I've ever had anything to do with. I have met these people. I've read their actual private thoughts. I mean, I don't talk about this because it's none of nobody's, I wish I hadn't, but it's there. And I had years and decades of work, in Scientology, seeing what people really get up to behind closed doors. And the people who have lots and lots of money aren't leading personally lives that are any more fulfilling or better or wonderful than anybody else.
No, they just have the money to try to mask it and do things that they think are going to make them happy, but they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Money is not going to necessarily be the thing that buys you happiness.
Only to a certain point. I remember them saying it's like 75,000 or 100,000 or something or whatever it is to meet your needs and still have some good times. You'll be happy. But once you get over that limit, it just doesn't change your happiness level. You could, like you said, be a billionaire. That's not going to make you any happier than being 100 millionaire because so what?
Exactly.
You have access to everything, but do you have a good family?
Well, exactly. And that's the thing I'm trying to point out is they're just as human and have just as many problems and issues as everybody else does. Stuart asks here, for example, the rich people you knew were in Scientology, isn't that related to their happiness? Yes and no. I mean, Scientology does do things that makes people very unhappy, but if you're a VIP Scientologist, you are getting such royal treatment from the Church of Scientology on a routine basis that it's that you often are quite happy. I mean, I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise thinks he's a very happy person, right? There's a lot of people who invest a lot of money, and that's part of the whole thing. I mean, unless I'm misunderstanding your question. Scientology doesn't make you miserable all the time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's this coercive thing, but part of the coercion is manipulating you to think that all of this is for your own good. And that this is what makes you happy, right? And happiness is a state of mind. So, anyway, okay. So those were the kind of the points I wanted to go over today that I had sort of prepared to talk about. Was the Musk thing, the Masterson thing. Somebody mentions this about NXIVM here.
Oh, they were asking if we had seen the new season and what we thought about it.
Yes, Nikki Klein. I actually responded to Nikki on Twitter the other day because she's still fully in the headspace of NXIVM. It was scary.
Wow.
She's total NXIVM apologist, and it's all good. And all the people who are speaking out against it are evil and must be destroyed, and they're the liars. And she's there for the truth, and she's there to pave the road to truth for Keith and for that group. And all these people have just been bad mouthing it, and they don't know. It's not. It's actually radically similar to Taryn Teutsch, the Mike Rinder's daughter, who has been on a social media crusade for years now. That's her assignment from the Church of Scientology, is to ruin Mike Rinder's good name by being his daughter and trashing him on a daily basis on social media. So this is Nikki Klein's doing the exact same thing for the NXIVM crowd, right? Where she's just up there talking her truth, and all these liars and scumbags who are making all this money off of trashing Keith, and now he's in jail, and Nancy, and it's crazy. I have not yet seen The Vow season 2 though. So sorry guys, I have not watched that yet.
We should mention, was her name Elizabeth Holmes? Is that her name?
That was the other thing. Yes, thank you. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Should have written it down. 11 years. That's right. That's right. There it is, right there. Yeah. Boom. Good timing. Yes. Okay, so Elizabeth Holmes. So connection to Scientology, no direct one that I'm aware of, but Scientology methods and techniques, coercive control techniques. Oh yeah, she was chock-a-block full of them. Elizabeth Holmes was a liar. Now I don't remember everything about her case. Now I did a podcast about her a couple of years ago when she went to trial, and now she's finally been sentenced, and she's going to jail for 11 years. Elizabeth Holmes' main crime, and this is a very pessimistic thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Her primary crime was that she ripped off rich people, very rich people.
Yeah, don't do that.
Henry Kissinger was on her board. I mean, people whose names you know, like money, lots of money, was thrown her way on the idea that she could create a medical device which would take a drop of blood, just one drop, and execute an entire, what's the word? Array of testing on it, right? A whole bunch of tests. And it's impossible. It's physically...
Yeah, we just can't do that. We're not there yet.
No, it's impossible to do what she was saying could be done. The reason that they draw all of your blood... Well, yeah, I mean, Roar, you're right. I mean, I'm being, a little with the rich people thing. You're absolutely right. Her biggest crime actually was that she misled, deceived, and hurt millions of people. I mean, hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people were tested through her devices and misdiagnosed or mistested or got bad results. That happened.
That's why 11 years doesn't feel like enough. It's like if she had gone into a liquor store and shot the guy in there, she'd probably be doing more time. And it's like, oh, but you did this little cult thing, so we'll give you 11 years.
Yeah, a little bit, right?
I mean, I saw that she doesn't have to report to prison until like something like March or April.
Oh, I did not see.
Oh, it must be nice to be pampered and have a time frame.
Well, as they say on what was it? We watched the Office the other day. What was that? She's not going.
Space,
yeah, the Office Space. That's right, Office Space. Yeah, she's not going to white collar club fed. She's or that is where she's going. Yeah. She's not going to the worst one.
Which always makes me angry because white collar crime actually usually hurts a ton of people, at once, and yet they usually tend to get less time than somebody who hurt like one person.
Yeah.
It's like
yes. These people. All right, now we got a caller. Okay. So we're gonna pick this up. And hello, is this Nicholas? Hey.
Yes, Chris. Wonderful.
Welcome to the show.
So I've got a couple of questions. Well, first of all, did you listen to Trump's blabbering a couple of days ago as far as him running for 2024?
I hope I don't disappoint you when I say that I am kind of done listening to Trump. I've heard everything that man has to say, so I didn't listen, but I did.
I can understand that.
I did read about it.
I can understand that completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. My concern is that, and I'm a bit of a student. I'm a bit of a history buff. Mm-hmm. And, I've looked at what happened in pre-World War I Germany, pre-World War II Germany, I just, all the disaster nonsense, all the stuff that happens before really bad genocides. And one of my biggest concerns, I know history doesn't really repeat, but it does rhyme. And one of my big concerns is that I see both the left and the right kind of moving towards authoritarianism. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure we have all, to a degree, taken one of those political compass tests where it measures authoritarianism versus libertarianism and left and right. I genuinely score, in the middle of left and right, but very close to the libertarianism. I do appreciate Ayn Rand's works despite her flaws, but I have enough of a mind to understand that she was flawed. I'm really kind of concerned because it's like I mean, I'm living here out in the Midwest, and I see a lot of people who, you know, it's like they want a new world order as long as it's through Trump or Jesus or whoever. But then
Right.
I'm looking at like
Right.
the World Economic Forum and all these other things, and Klaus Schwab is doing what he's doing. I'm really kind of concerned because it looks like we're going to get fascism sometime after 2024, regardless of what side we're on. And I really honestly don't think people understand that. And I know some people need to have strict rules, strict, rigid rules, but I'm really worried that a lot of us, higher thinking, more neurodivergent, more libertarian people are going to get caught up in the nonsense. And I'm kind of wondering, what are your thoughts on what can we do to avoid the fate of, prior societies? Because whether it's right or left, we're going to have to deal with potentially a very rigid, domineering government, whether it's, a right-leaning MAGA theocracy or a, whatever the leftists are going to call their
on the left, you've got your communist, Marxist, revolutionary forces and Antifa and things like that. For sure, I definitely get where you're coming from. I don't see the world as quite teetering on the precipice that some people do. I've been there, done that. Definitely had that point of view before. I think in the short term, we are going to see an awful lot of tumult. And by short term, I mean, 10, 20 years. Sure, there's all kinds of nonsense that's going to go on. There's a historical perspective that is often missed. It's something I've been thinking an awful lot about lately that I haven't really talked about much. So thanks for calling and asking about this. Which is that we're in the moments. We are hyper aware of all the details and all the little bits and pieces that make up our society, including all the little awful bits that in the historical perspective tend to get kind of forgotten about because they don't actually matter. But in the moment, they do. For the here and now, they do. Don't get me wrong. I am in no way, shape, or form saying that Trumpsters and Red Hats and Christian nationalists and evangelicals on the right or Antifa and violent agitators and Marxists on the left are not something to be worried about. Of course they are, right? If you don't do something, right, then you could have problems. But on the other hand, let's keep in mind the numbers here and what we're looking at. And we're looking at, very loud, very boisterous, very, agitating groups who want lots and lots of attention and do lots and lots of things to get that attention. When you start really diving into their plans and programs and ideas and ideas of what they want to do with themselves, you find that they're batshit crazy. And they couldn't organize their way out of a wet paper bag, right? I mean, when you look at January 6th as the, the ultimate expression of what they were doing. Well, it was organized.
Yeah, but I think and I don't mean to interrupt. I do apologize, but I think a lot of it is, part of it is, I mean, January 6th, if they would have brought guns, it could have been a problem. Just like, the night of the long knives, back in Germany, that was a problem because they brought weapons.
Absolutely. Which is why I'm not trying to say you're coming out of nowhere with your fears. At all. I'm not trying to say that they're unfounded or unwarranted or not, necessary or something. I just want to, I want to go big picture for a minute, kind of longer term to go, hey, it could be bad. Or on the other hand, this could be a blip.
Kind of like the Tea Party. Who even thinks about them anymore?
Well, exactly. And yet at the time, the Tea Party was going to revolutionize the United States, right? It was the biggest thing ever. Remember all those sit-ins at Wall Street and all those groups showing up? Again, not saying it's nothing, not trying to downplay it as, haha, don't worry about it. I'm just trying to offer a little bit of a longer-term perspective.
Yeah, and I get that. But I think a lot of what my issue is, and I'm sure a lot of people have this perspective. It's like, because I think a lot of us watching this channel and other channels are a little bit of, political, aficionados. We like to watch that stuff. We like to keep abreast of the news.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like it does distract us from, living our lives. But at the same time, it's like I don't want to avoid the news so much that, by the time they're rolling tanks down Main Street, I'm just like, how the hell did this happen? And I guess it's difficult to find a balance.
It is. It very much is.
Yeah, and I don't voting.
Well,
I was going to say I don't see voting really happening because for example, in my area, I know they got all excited about like the voting for presidents and congressmen and whatnot. Not that nonsense, but like, and I am in the Midwest, mind you. There weren't that many Democrats running. And yet the Republicans were running such slanderous nonsense that it should have enraged the Democrats enough to get out there and vote, and yet they didn't do. Not only did they not vote, but most of these Republicans, especially for local offices, had no competition whatsoever.
Wow.
And that just kind of like infuriates me because it's like, well, if we're not going to stand up on our hindquarters, it's like, well, okay, we might as well be treated like dogs because if we're not going to stand up and say something, well, we're choosing oppression.
Yes. Let me say this. Let me say this about that. Let me think about this for a second because I want to be. Hold on one second.
Concise. Yes.
We have. You've described a problem, but I don't know that it's leading. Here's what I'm thinking in terms of what you just said about the voting thing. Okay. The way I see it, think about it, watch people, hear what they say, hear the representation is, we have a real lack of representation problem in this country. Our upper class and our lower class look too different. And the middle class, of course, we talk about, I've been hearing since a kid, the disappearance of the middle class. And it's a thing. It's true. I mean, we do have a problem. So there is you could call it a distribution of wealth problem. Look at it through that lens. But I think it's a representation problem. I don't think we feel represented by our representatives. And the desire to go vote for somebody or a couple people who clearly don't have your best interests at heart and really couldn't care less what you think as a citizen are people that you have no confidence in. So are you going to get up and go vote for either one of them? Of course you're not. And that's where I think half the country right now, based on voting statistics, is sitting at where I just described. They just don't feel it.
And I think a lot of it is people feel powerless and they feel like, I know here in the Midwest, a lot of people believe in Calvinism, so they don't bother voting because they think, well, God is going to make the best decision, which is absolute nonsense.
Yes, that's a whole other layer of that's a whole other layer of problem if they're assigning.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's another problem.
Here's what I see on the atheist. Here's what I see on the more left atheism model is there's also the problem of nihilism. One of the reasons that I really respect Ayn Rand is she wasn't a nihilist about it, and I see from a lot of nihilistic atheists, they're like, well, we're not going to bother voting because it doesn't matter. Well, they say that now until we're paying $6 a gallon for gas, and you can't find a can of beans in the store. This is a problem.
Oh, I get it. I hear that. I have to challenge you for a second because okay. I have only experienced atheist communities firsthand in Minnesota and now in Denver, and certainly longer term here in Denver. You're from the Midwest, you say.
Yeah.
So I have yet to run into any atheist anywhere who has told me what you just described. Every atheist I know has been civic-minded and actually quite active and a little knowledgeable in the political arena. Now, I'm not claiming because I got those anecdotes that that's how it is. I'm expressing a little bit of surprise.
Oh, no, I probably need to expand my social circle. Yes, definitely.
Okay, because that's quite a statement because I've never heard an atheist say that, and I both online and offline, I've experienced the atheist world, and they're pretty pretty on it about this stuff, mostly because they have such a vested interest in separation of church and state.
Yeah.
Is what I've seen there, but again, I just wanted to push back on that a little bit. But I agree with you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, let me say though that I agree with you about the nihilism. I've experienced it myself. Right, yeah. It's a little hard, and it's gotten me thinking quite a bit. And I had to kind of think through a whole bunch of how do I think about this so it's not all useless or meaningless or doesn't add up to anything, and there's still meaning in life without a supernatural component. And it took me a little while, but I figured it out. Yeah.
Well, and here's one of my issues with I'm not sure if you've heard one of there was a podcast that Jordan Peterson did where he interviewed Sam Harris, and they were both agreeing that their number one was no such thing as free will, but there was also predestination, which is actually a Calvinist idea. And I was kind of horrified because I was like, well, no, if you're an atheist, free will would be, if you were creating an atheist list of virtues, free will, I would assume, would be like number one on that list. Because it's like you only have yourself. You alone are your own sovereign mind.
Right.
And to have both an atheist and a religious, I don't know what the hell you'd call Peterson, but to have them both agree that there's no such thing as free will, it's like, what the blank is going on?
Yeah, that's not something I agree with them on. I don't know if you ever saw or where, I did a podcast on free will a few years ago after I read Harris's book on free will. And it really got me, again, it was one of those things that really got me thinking. And I put out a podcast and I said, well, look, lacking any further information on this, I'm going to kind of put out there that, free will is not really a thing. And I based that on Harris's logic and the neuroscience, neurology that I had been aware of and had learned about. Since then, I have had some very deep conversations with some pretty smart people who have been thinking about this stuff too. And they introduced to me the concept of nuance and levels of free will, which definitely made an awful lot of sense to me. And so I absolutely agree that we have free will. It's all a matter of how you frame the argument as to whether it's a yes or no question on that,
Well, and as I've mentioned before on one of these calls, I'm studying to become an addictions counselor, and I am meeting other people in this area who are doing sociological work and whatever they're studying to become sociologists and whatnot. And I've noticed when I speak to somebody who's an addict and I talk about free will, and I really make the argument for it, sometimes it's like a light goes on in their head. It's like they have an aha moment. And whether they use that or not, I don't know. But it just seems to me, and again, I'll go back to Ayn Rand, it seems to me that this individual sovereignty, the idea of individual sovereignty and free will, is fundamental and paramount to individual human existence. And to see that being stomped on by either the right or left, makes them, makes any cult that stomps on free will, it makes them, my enemy. I know I'm being a bit melodramatic, but nonetheless.
Understood. All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna let you go now. We've been talking for about 15 minutes because we didn't have any other calls in the queue, and I was totally fine with that. Did not expect to go into philosophy tonight. I'm sorry?
You have a great weekend.
Oh, you have a good weekend too. Thanks for calling in. All right. Bye-bye. Okay. Yeah, definitely did not expect to get into philosophy tonight. I only, yes, Robert Sapolsky has amazing things to say about free will. I love that guy. Didn't know we were going to go there tonight, but that's the wonder and pleasure of having a call-in show is you guys get to take me other places. I'm not sure how much you guys want to hear about my philosophical ideas about God, the universe, and everything. So I'm kind of pulling away from that because I didn't want to get into way other stuff when we're, mainly talking culty, coercive control stuff. I like politics. There's things I'll talk about all day long, but I don't know that anybody else cares. So I don't want to necessarily get into all of that. Plus, I realized we're at the end of the show. So, guys, I want to thank all my critics out there. Your support is awesome. Thanks for coming and watching us for the week here. Let's go ahead and wrap up with our usual end of episode bits and pieces, which we will go into here first. As everybody knows, we have these critical thinking cards, and this week, the logical fallacy of the week is...
the Texas sharpshooter. Cherry-picking data clusters to suit an argument or finding a pattern to fit a presumption. The makers of Sugarette candy drinks point to research showing that of the 5 countries where Sugarette drinks sell the most units, 3 of them are in the top 10 healthiest countries on Earth. Therefore, Sugarette drinks are healthy.
Oh, that's an obviously logical conclusion from that data. Clearly, it is the case that soft drinks are amazingly healthy for you. Yes, I did do cherry Coke this evening, by the way. Yes, you noticed that correctly earlier. Now, as far as wrapping up for the week, this week's podcast on my show, on my channel here, you'll see tomorrow, is an interview with a man named Andy Seidel, and he has written a book about Christian nationalism and the Supreme Court. And so we got into that and talked with him for about an hour about that, about his book, about the topic, about the Supreme Court, about the influence of extremist religion on the right and our government. And anybody who thinks, though, that connection doesn't exist, it exists. Okay, the facts are all there. And Andy is one of the people who he's a lawyer by profession, and he spends an awful lot of time researching and talking about this stuff. He's a real serious thinker in person. He's not some wacko conspiracy guy. So I hope you guys will give that podcast a watch or listen. And then we will have a regular Q&A show this week. And if you did not catch my 2-hour bonus live Q&A show that I did yesterday, I hope you guys will check that out, because I alternated between some questions I brought in so I can start working on bringing my question queue down and still engaging with you guys. So am I going to do this show the day after Thanksgiving? Are we doing this show next Friday?
I don't see why not.
I don't either. Of course we're doing a show next Friday. So I do want to wish happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah.
I will probably do another live Q&A show midweek because I'm still trying to bring my queue down, and I've really only just begun. So watch for that probably Wednesday, because I'm not going to do it Thursday for obvious reasons. But hopefully Wednesday I'll figure that out. If not Wednesday, Tuesday. One of these days this next week. So watch for that. You guys have a great weekend. And I hope the show here this week was educational, informative, and entertaining. And bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.